Hey there, it's Lainey, and I'm here to speak with you about what people do when they tend to be really stressed. And this is something that's been obviously brought to everybody's attention more so now with everything with the virus going on and everybody being pushed to their max. And I just want to shed a little bit of light and give you a framework to think about this and have some awareness without judgment, just to help you find your balance and find your sweet spot. One of my gurus is Brene Brown. I just adore her. And she referred to a book that have read and I'm reading again. It's by Harriet Lerner. It's called The Dance of Connection. It's super good. And it's a concept that's brought up in her book is called overfunctioning and underfunctioning. And it's two sides of the same coin, really. When people are faced with a lot of stress, they tend to go to one side or another rather than leaning in to actually having the feelings around the event and having the experience of going through the event. They tend to go to one extreme or the other. So let me explain both of them, and then let's talk a little bit about how you can find your sweet spot. So the overfunctioner. And I wanted to share this with you because I spoke with parents this week, two different moms, one who was an overfunctioner and one who was an underfunctioner. And I thought, okay, what a great thing to talk about. An overfunctioner is somebody who, in the face of stress, will step into the controlling role and will want to organize and want to be the point of contact for everything. In a family system, they're the person who's most relied upon. It's neither one of these is good or bad. It's just a way of dealing. And so much of that script was written for us, and those roles were developed in our first families when we were young. So the overfunctioner is a person that people look to, is like the captain in the huddle, right? Nothing bad there, except when people are older and are able to take care of themselves, steps into that role too frequently, ends up stepping over the line, taking over situations where somebody else could actually be helping out or in control even. And so the overfunctioner, when he or she tips over in that role, ends up being a person who can rob other people of their ability and desire to show up and help out in a situation. So the mom who I talked to this week in her overfunctioning was feeling so stressed out at home, and she's trying to control everything at home, just, to keep things clean and to keep the homework going with her young kids and, showing up for school on time and also brushing teeth. And she was in such a mode of overfunctioning that she was actually taking away from her partner the ability to show up. So at the same time that she felt like she was doing too much, she was getting kind of resentful of her partner for not showing up and not helping out with carrying that load of what's going on at home. And what happens typically with overfunctioners is that they're doing so much and taking on so much of their own so much of the responsibilities, like more than their fair share, that they actually, like I said, rob the other person of stepping up into their own power. And that can create a dynamic of resentment between the couple as well, between the two adults, if there are two adults at home. On the flip side, we've got the underfunctioner who, when stress hits, that person tends to avoid taking responsibility. He or she is the person who tends to roll up in a ball, who hides in a hole, who just can't deal. And the issue moves off of what the attention moves off of what the actual issue is, what the stressful situation is, and more onto that person and taking care of that person. So what that person does, and again, this is often unconscious because it's something that we were doing when we were younger, right? And it is partly, I think, the way that we're wired, and definitely habitual at this point as adults and as parents ourselves. But what happens is that person, the underfunctioner, creates resentment as well because the other people are so busy taking care of that person or worrying about them that they can't focus on the matters at hand. So just to reiterate, neither one of those is good or bad. It's just a way that we were patterned to respond to stress, the roles that we were put into typically when we were little, and we grew into those roles. And to some degree, they became, winning formulas for us, right? They became ways that we just learned how to deal with stressful situations or maybe not so much deal with the situation, but how to go through a stressful situation. So the mom that I was talking to, who was the underfunctioner, that played out in her house that she was just kind of throwing up her hands. She was like, I can't deal with it anymore. I'm just going to close myself in my room and eat Oreos. And I just can't even handle my kids' tantrums. I can't handle them, fighting anymore. I can't handle it, right? Now, if you recognize in either one of those, the overfunctioner or the underfunctioner, of course you're not alone. This is how human beings typically are. And it's how we manifest or express our having gone into fight or flight, right? And I think what's really important here is to notice that neither one of those ways of being, neither one of those styles really lets us go through in an authentic way what we're really feeling. The overfunctioner is kind of like going over the feelings and just dealing with the logistics and just taking over, right? Just taking the reins and usually not having feelings around it. And the underfunctioner is going lower usually than the actual feelings of the event, going lower and underneath them so that the attention goes to them and not to the event itself. Neither one of those reactions is going to get you in an authentic way, in a balanced way, going through an experience by saying, this is really hard. This is really stressful. This is really painful. I'm going to sit with my feelings a little bit. I'm not going to drown in them. I'm not going to take a big bath in them. Maybe I'll have a good cry from time to time, but I'm not just going to ball up in the corner and give up. And I'm not just going to take over everything. I'm going to actually walk through this like a fully functional adult. Now, for those of us who weren't raised with that kind of role modeling, it's really hard to know how to do that. And I can talk about that in another video if you're interested. And what I'll do below is I'll post some links of how you can find out more about this topic and what I'm talking about. And I'd love to hear from you. Do you think you're an overfunctioner? Are you an underfunctioner? Do you flip-flop between the two? I'm really curious and I'd really like to know. And how does that affect your parenting? And my other question would be, how is this a good thing for you? Like when I said winning formulas before, usually always what happens is that when we develop a habit, there's something about it that's working for us. It might not be healthy or adaptive, but there's something that's feeding us in some way about it. There's a reason why we still stay in that role, right? It validates something about us or our own belief about ourselves, good or bad, positive or negative, right? How is it working for you? How does in that role, and how does it not work for you? How does, when I get into overfunctioning mode, I get stressed out and like I can't sleep and I get resentful, like this other mom I was telling you about, my partner isn't picking up his or her end of the rope, right? So how does it not work for you to be even the overfunctioner, right? And how does it not work for you if you tend to go to the underfunctioner? And how does that manifest itself in your life? It's just really good awareness. I'm not here, of course, I'm never here to judge. I'm just here to shed light, talk about stuff that people don't usually talk about, especially when it comes to parenting. Everybody's so wrapped up in, stopping the tantrum or stopping the backseat backfighting and fighting in the backseat. And that stuff's important. But if you don't understand where you're coming from, if you don't have your inner game on and you don't have real awareness about what's going on inside you, all that other stuff is going to fall short at best, and it might actually end up backfiring because you might be dealing with your kids in a way that's because you're not operating from your authentic place. You're not going to be interacting with them in a way that's authentic. And kids, more than kids and dogs, right? They can smell authenticity and inauthenticity a mile away. It's like blood in the water, right? And so I want you to be feeling as authentic as you can. And that process, my friend, is all about knowing where you really stand on things and how you tend to operate and how, if you need to shift, if it's not working for you, how do you make those shifts happen? So I've got links for you below. Please check them out. And I will see you next time. I hope this helped as always. Bye.